Hello and welcome to My Thing, Your Thing. It is our Halloween Spooktacular! Ooh.
I'm Donovan.
I'm Hannah.
Or I'm... Bonevit...
No.
Dead.
Dedovan works a little bit better.
Dedovan sounds like the sequel to Getovan.
Yeah. Anyway, hello. So all this month we are going to be talking about the horror media that we love, that we want to share with each other and with you, our dear listeners.
Yeah.
And in this first episode of our Halloween Spooktacular, we are talking about one of my favorite books, John Dies at the End. Mm-hmm. So John Dies at the End is a horror comedy book. It started its life as a blog post on a website called Pointless Waste of Time. If you are young enough to not know this, you used to be able to just have websites. Mm-hmm. Like anybody could have their own website, and they could have forums on those websites, and they could post whatever they wanted, and it was really just up to whoever owned it and or the servers about what was or was not allowed to be posted there.
I mean, that is still true, but most people are on like giant social media sites now, so it's a little different.
There's less of the Wild West internet, and most places are like owned by the large conglomerates.
Boo. More weirdos in basements.
God, I wish. Yeah. Sometime in the middle to late 2000s, I picked up this book called John Dies at the End. It's a horror comedy book about cosmic horrors that are far beyond our comprehension. And the two dumbass fuck-ups who try to stop it.
Yay!
J-Date, the initialism for John Dies at the End, although I suppose I could say acronym because you can't actually pronounce that.
I thought J-Date was a Japanese dating website.
Doesn't it? Yeah. J-Date presents itself as a first-hand account of the author David Wong, not his real name, and his friend, the titular John. His last name is Cheese. It's not in this book. It's in later books.
It's a good last name.
It's a good last name. Also, not his name.
Yeah.
Initially, the story of J-Date was posted free to read on the author's personal website.
Yeah, and it was like serialized, right?
It was serialized, yes. So sort of the joke of Pointless Waste of Time was that David Wong, who was, that was also his internet name, essentially, would write these articles pretending to be like firsthand things that he had done that slowly got more and more stupid until you realized you had wasted your time reading this article.
Yeah.
So roughly like the first-ish Halloween 2001, David Wong posted a similar kind of thing that started out as a story about him and his friend going to go deal with a ghost that a friend of theirs, that someone that they had met, needed help with.
Yeah.
And that eventually became the first of the John Dies at the End stories that was later compiled into this book. The next year, there was another story about him going to go deal with some other thing, and then the next year was another one. And eventually, all of those stories got brought together in a free ebook. This was, I believe, in about 2004. And then later was published into, like, an actual, like, hardcover book.
Yeah.
The book is... It's supposed to be a first-hand account. Mm-hmm. So these are all things that supposedly actually did happen in this small town of Undisclosed. David Wong is not going to tell you where he lives because he doesn't want you going anywhere near that place. It's a hellhole.
It's both a literal and figurative hellhole.
Yes.
In many ways.
It's constantly called Undisclosed. He says that it is close to the border of Kentucky, but still on this side of the Mason-Dixon line, basically.
Yeah. I think he implies that it's like southern Indiana, right?
It's implied that it's southern Indiana, yeah.
Yeah, so, somewhere.
Undisclosed is described as a town that is big enough to have 5 McDonald's and, like, a cab service, but you're not just going to catch a cab on the corner. You have to call for them.
Yeah.
Sort of the framing device is that David Wong is telling all of these strange events that he has been party to a journalist.
Yeah.
And this journalist is like listening to him in like growing horror as he's trying to figure out if this is all bullshit or if the world is about to end.
Yeah, he keeps kind of like popping back and forth between like being like entranced and like thinking it's real to being like, this is probably made up.
Yeah, this guy is a massive dumbass who wasted so much of my time.
Yeah, pointless waste of time.
Pointless waste of time. So the book can pretty easily be broken up into about 5 sections. The prologue, the thing in Vegas, the thing in the Dead Mall, the thing with Amy, and then the epilogue. Because the book was initially serialized online, there are still shades of that serialization.
Yes.
You can absolutely pick and choose which stories you wanted to read. If you wanted to do a reread, there are a couple of them that you could just like completely skip and just read your favorite bits.
Mm-hmm.
But I love this book, and I've read it many, many, many times.
Yeah, I read this for the first time. I listened to an audio book version of it, which I quite liked.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely enjoyed it. However, the serialization comes through. You can kind of tell that the story early on isn't moving in the same direction that the story does at the end.
Yes.
That's fine. That's pretty common, I think, with this kind of story. And, you know, I think the middle story, the Dead Mall, is kind of the weakest of all of it.
Yeah.
I'm also not a huge fan of some of the epilogue. We'll talk about that later.
Sure.
I think the prologue, the thing in Vegas, and the thing with Amy are all fantastic. Like, I think those are the highlights of the book. And
Yeah.
I think the Dead Mall part is fine. Like, you know, it's not bad. It's just a little boring. And then I'll talk about my problems with the epilogue a little bit later. But in general, I did really like it. I had a lot of fun. I really like the characters.
Yes.
That's kind of my main thing. You know, they're just kind of 2 Midwestern fuck-ups. John, in particular, he's just so funny. If you've ever just known that dude who, like, you cannot understand, 1, why women love him so much, and 2, like, how does he make money? How does he move through life? He just seems like he's constantly a dumbass and fucking up.
How does he survive on that many stimulants and also that much alcohol?
Yeah, and he just kind of like goes through life without a care in the world, and you wish you could be him, kind of, because like I've known so many people like that. Maybe not so many. I've known quite a few dudes in particular who are like that, and you're just like, what?
One of the things that I really like about this book is that someone very, very, very long time ago, when I was talking to them about this, they kind of framed it as David is not the main character. John is the main character. David is just the one telling you the story.
I would disagree with that,
Uh-huh.
but I understand where it's coming from.
Yeah.
I would say David absolutely is the main character. He's kind of the fulcrum around which everything moves. But, like, John is this sort of, wow, what would be the way to put this? John's kind of the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern character, you know?
Yeah.
Where he's sort of wandering around the side of the plot. It's just a character, you know? David feels like a real person in lots of ways. Mm-hmm. John feels sort of like a character, which is funny because I just said I knew people like him in real life, but it's true. Like, John feels like a guy who's in a book, but also somebody that's very, like, I know someone like that. Whereas David, you get in his head and you understand where he's coming from. You understand, you know, that kind of stuff. And then also, I think Amy, you know, she comes around later. Mm-hmm. She's a very interesting character. Disabled representation.
Yeah.
Like, pretty decent. I like her a lot. I like some of the side characters. You know, Marconi is very interesting, kind of an asshole. Robert North.
The weird man.
Very fun and weird.
The Ballad of Fred Shue.
Fred Shue. Yeah, I really liked Jennifer Lopez, not that Jennifer Lopez.
Yes, different Jennifer Lopez. You'll only think of that it's the other Jennifer Lopez if you see her from behind.
Yeah.
Really quickly about John, this is just one of the quotes that kind of describes him. The whole bit was something that John had come up with. The man having a terrible habit of carrying out his drunken 3 a.m. ideas even after daylight and sobriety came. It was always 3 a.m. for John.
Yeah, it was always 3 a.m. for John is exactly how to describe it.
There's a bit later where David is talking about, like, not wanting to be, like, dealing with any of this nonsense anymore.
Yeah.
But, like, being in John's orbit always, like, sucks you back in. And so eventually you're just sitting on his couch, half drunk, playing video games, laughing at how stupid the world is.
Yeah, I'm a musician. I've hung around with a lot of, you know, 20 to 50 something fuck ups, you know, and all of them have this charm and this magnetism, and you want to spend time with them because you think they're cool and you think they're fun, but you also get this feeling that, like, God, if I spend more time with this person, I'm going to become like them. I'm going to be lost to this world. And that's kind of a theme of the book in a lot of ways.
Yes. You can always be struggling to have a normal, put-together life, but you will always be sucked back down into the chaos. The sort of the terror of the inevitable.
Yes.
There is a quote at one point where David is talking about how he felt like life was some giant dance and everybody else learned the steps, and he was just constantly stumbling through and getting knocked down and pushed out, and one day he was just going to be out in the rain with all of the rest of the weirdos while all of the normal people continued with this dance. But like, the inevitable is not just the horror of all of the people just looking at you and being like, wow, what a weirdo. It is legitimate cosmic horror.
Yes.
There is an otherworldly entity that is trying to take over our world, essentially.
Yes. And it seems to have, if not unlimited powers, like, close to it.
Yes.
You know, without getting too much into it, there is an implication that they can, like, rewrite history, they can erase you from existence, like they can do all of these like really powerful things, because it's sort of implied that this power exists sort of at all times at once, that it's not linear, you know. So there's a sort of hopelessness of like, how can we beat this guy? But, you know, they strike a couple blows.
They do, yes.
Yeah.
And you were in David's head. So
Yes.
you are listening to him talk constantly about like how bad he is at this and how much he hates doing everything and he doesn't want to be here, and he knows that one of these days he is going to get into a fight that he is not prepared for and he will die.
Yeah.
And he constantly manages to get out of all of those scrapes.
Yep, he sure does.
Sometimes with horrible violence, but he does.
Yes.
That is another theme of this book, is that David is an unreliable narrator in the best way. He will not tell you things about himself. We're in his head, we're listening to his thought process, but he will not tell you things about himself that he is not necessarily, it's not that he's ashamed of them, it is that he knows that if you know that about him, you're going to look at him different, and he doesn't want you to do that.
But also, I would say, kind of to the opposite of that, he's also very self-denigrating. Like,
Yes.
he does not like himself, and so he does not talk about his positives either.
Yeah.
He won't talk about his worst negatives, but he doesn't talk about his positives. He just sort of thinks of himself as this mediocre, shitty dude.
Towards the end of the book, Amy asks him, why do you hate yourself so much? And he says, if I knew me as somebody else, I would hate him just as much. Why have the double standard?
Yeah. This sounds depressing, but I'm gonna tell you, like, there's sort of like a hopeful thing in there, weirdly enough. I just think that David is such a compelling point of view.
Yes.
If nothing else, David as the point of view, and then John as sort of his like fun side character, best friend, who you sort of, a lot of stuff bounces off of. And they're just really fun, and no matter what you think about the stories, you kind of want to know what happens to them. You get invested, and I think the strength of the book is that the characters feel real, is maybe the wrong word. The characters are very compelling, and you want to see what happens to them. And I would say that the things that happen to them feel very real.
And their reactions also feel very real. David is constantly being embroiled in all sorts of otherworldly nonsense, and he is constantly being like, I hate this so much, I don't want to be here, but there's nobody else that can stop it, so I guess it's me. God damn it. I will say, so I super recommend picking this book up, especially if you like horror and comedy. I will say there are quite a few slurs in this book. In fact, a lot more than I remembered from the first time that I read it.
Yes.
Specifically, they use the N-word with the hard R and also the R slur. And if that's going to make you uncomfortable, skip it. They are constantly being used by people who are, like, it's not redeemable the way that they are being used. It's not like someone is the person who are using them are like good people.
Yeah, no, they are being used, I would say, academically is the wrong way to put it, but David is not saying those words in hate. He is saying those words in a sense that like this other person is saying this word. That is, you know, you're hearing it from that perspective.
He does occasionally. So David, the main character, does not use the N word. However, he does occasionally use the R word. I would like to remind people this was the early 2000s, and attitudes about words have shifted over time. Mm-hmm. I don't remember this slur that much in this book, and I also don't remember it in other books. So I have to go back and read the later books and see if the language has changed over time.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that's kind of the initial spoiler-free sort of overview.
Yes, I would say if you are interested in cosmic horror, Lovecraftian, there's some decent, fun comedy. I think it's a lot of fun. Now we're going to get into some nitty-gritty details and talk more about it. So, spoilers from here on out.
Yeah. So very quick overview. The prologue is kind of set after a lot of stuff has already happened. After they have already experienced a lot of like cosmic and otherworldly horror kind of things. David and John have sort of become the people in town that get contacted when some nonsense is going down that the cops can't handle.
Yeah.
And so then they usually go out and see what's happening, and a lot of the times they're just like they don't... They're not Ghostbusters.
No.
Is the main thing. They don't have a little pod that they can put spirits in. A lot of the time, the way that they deal with whatever supernatural thing is going on is they like yell at it or like play heavy metal music until it goes away.
Yeah, they imply pretty early on that music, for some reason, because it's like the structured and rhythmic like sounds,
yes,
like, and the beings that they're fighting are like chaotic, that there's something about the sound of music that hurts them, specifically melody.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a whole thing.
Speaking of the things that like the haunting, essentially, this is a really good bit that I like a lot that kind of sets up a lot more of the book. This is not something that's really on page. They just kind of talk about it. But there's like this lawyer whose name is Fred who suddenly starts having these hallucinations. He sees spiders all over his car and crashes. At one point, his wife brings out this beautiful roast dinner and he sees a roasted baby.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, he goes to doctors and all this kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with him. David and John finally come by and they help him by telling him, you're seeing something and you are actually seeing it.
Yeah.
You have essentially been infected almost by a thing and you're not crazy. You're just seeing stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's this quote, you see, Frank found out the hard way that the dark things lurking in the night don't haunt old houses or abandoned ships. They haunt minds. And this idea of your mind being haunted is one of that carries throughout the book. Whatever these things are, they can affect the way that you see and hear and sometimes even taste things.
Yes. They can affect your senses. They can make you feel things and hear things and see things that aren't there, you know, and they can fuck with you in subtle ways.
So the first story is John calls David because he has met someone who has the ghost of her dead ex-boyfriend haunting her house, and they're going to go out to her house to help her with it. And when David first sees her, he sees a very, very small, very vulnerable, doll-like woman with brown hair. And so they go out to this house and they're like trying to draw this ghost out. And there's this kind of a thing where like this all deals in cliches. So like they're trying to draw this ghost out and they're like, well, I'm going to go take a shower by myself and like I'm going to go take a nap in the dark and light a bunch of candles.
Yeah.
And eventually they figure out that when they're talking about this girl who needs help, they're seeing two different people.
Yeah, John is seeing like this bombshell blonde and David is seeing this like sort of small, petite brunette woman who's like vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, and because that's going to play on each of their emotions in a particular way.
Yes.
And then it turns out it's a bunch of meat.
Yeah, there's this monster, whatever it is, just like takes all of the meat out of the freezer in this house that they have gotten and turns into a giant meat monster.
Yeah.
And it yells at them like, you know, we've faced each other many times, and they're like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I'll get you, Dr. Marconi. And they're like, neither of us are Dr. Marconi, but we can get you on the phone.
Yeah, we got his phone number because of a thing that we learn about later.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a fun little setup, is that we learn about this character early on, and then later on we meet him, and then he kind of comes back at the end a little bit.
Yeah.
And Dr. Marconi is basically this like professor who studies this stuff, and he knows all this stuff.
He is an ordained priest, but yes, he is also like a paranormal expert, basically.
Yeah.
But they do get him on the phone, and he like exorcises this demon over the phone.
Like that. Like it's crazy. They're like, wow, he's good.
Yeah. And so like that's the first thing, and it's the very beginning of sort of the establishing the ideas of it's your mind that's haunted, but also these things can actually hurt you.
Yes. The next story, The Thing in Vegas, it begins with a story about how they first learn about the paranormal, how they sort of get drawn into this world. Basically, they're at a party where John's band, Three Arm Sally, yeah. Fun band name.
So good.
With a bunch of hilarious songs like Gay Superman and Camel Holocaust. And
really quickly, this is a description of the band. It was me, Head, the drummer, Wally Brown, bass, Kelly Smallwood, bass, and Munch Lombard, bass. John was lead guitar and vocals, but he wasn't on stage. Not yet. I should let you know that I had no idea how to play the guitar or any of the musical instrument, and that the sound of my singing voice could probably draw blood from a man's ears and perhaps kill a dog outright.
Yeah. So, and Three Arm Sally, I believe David later on says, is the shittiest band I have ever heard.
Yes.
And I love that. But they're playing the show, and David runs into this guy who's like fake Jamaican. He is basically like saying things that shouldn't be possible, and he's doing magic that shouldn't be possible. And like the whole time David's like, he's tricking us, he's doing some kind of thing. But at one point, this guy, he pulls out like a centipede, and then he makes it disappear. And then later on, David throws up, and the centipede comes out of him.
He throws up the centipede.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And so like he's like, oh, something about this guy is real. And it turns out that he's giving out this drug. It's this little black substance, and they call it
Soy sauce.
And this kind of becomes an important plot point for all of the stories, because soy sauce is this drug, but it doesn't really affect you in the way that a drug normally does. It essentially makes your, like, it opens your mind and consciousness up to the, like, spiritual realm.
Kind of if you think of, like, being in our reality as listening to, like, a single station on the radio. Taking soy sauce opens you to every single station on the radio.
Yeah. And it gives you powers that are ill-defined and kind of change throughout the story. And if I had one complaint, it's that it seems like early on the soy sauce does some crazy stuff that allows you to be like really powerful.
Yeah.
And then later on it just kind of makes you like smart.
Yeah.
But like it doesn't, it seems like it's a little inconsistent.
Yeah, I will say that what the soy sauce can do is a bit inconsistent. And, like, you can kind of hand wave that by saying that, like, well, it comes from a different dimension, and,
Sure.
like, the people who make it don't even really know what it is or what it does. But I will say that is kind of a bit of a point against this, especially because, like, in the next book, every time they take the soy sauce, it does one specific thing that it does not do in this book.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
So, yeah, it
there we
is
go.
kind of like it just does whatever.
Yeah, so that's a little bit frustrating. And it's kind of a classic storytelling problem where it's just like, oh, if you have the juice that if you drink it solves all your problems, then like
why aren't you always drinking the
why
juice?
aren't you drinking the juice? And it's like, well, it summons the devil essentially.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like, okay, yeah, sure, but like it also lets you beat the devil. So
yeah,
I don't know. I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt, you know, to that as like a fine as a storytelling convention, but it does frustrate me a tiny little bit.
Sure. So after this party, it's like 3:00 in the morning, and David is getting phone calls from John.
Yeah.
And John is freaking out about something. And so David goes over because John is kind of his best and only friend. And also they work at the same video store. They work at Wally's Video store.
Which is a place you only go to if you missed the Blockbuster, the exit before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he goes over to try and help John, and he manages to get him out of his apartment, and John is freaking out and is incoherent.
Yeah, and the things he's saying doesn't make sense. The phone calls he got from John earlier were contradictory. One's like, you got to come help me, and the other one's like, don't come here.
Have I called you yet tonight?
Yeah, and, you know, the whole time, it's just really weird.
And they're eventually sitting in a Denny's because they need to be somewhere, and Denny's is open.
Yeah.
And they're having this conversation, and John is trying to explain what happened that night, and he's not making any sense. And while they're sitting in the diner, David gets a phone call from John.
Yeah.
He is listening to John on his phone while John is sitting directly across from him. And John says, "I'm very sorry, man. I'm sorry for all the things that's about to happen and for all the people that are going to explode."
Yeah. This is the moment where the veil of reality sort of breaks down and now shit starts to get weird. We won't get too much into it. He goes to a police station to get interrogated.
There are a bunch of people who died after the party. He gets interrogated by the police because him and John appear to be the only people who have survived.
He talks through a bratwurst.
He and John are trying to get to Vegas because John is insistent that they have to get to Vegas while he is catatonic and speaking through the bratwurst.
Yeah, and it turns out that he's astral projecting into a dog.
Yeah, Molly the dog.
And Molly belongs to this character, Big Jim, as well as his younger sister, Amy, who we don't know her name yet. We just know her as Cucumber.
Yeah.
For a gross reason that you should read the book to find out.
Yeah.
That's how we sort of meet Amy as a character. We also meet Big John. He kind of becomes important.
Yeah, so while they're trying to make plans to get to Vegas, David and John both get essentially kidnapped by someone who has been infected by something from a different dimension.
Yes.
He is no longer Kyle or Kevin or whatever his name was. He now goes by Shitload because there's a shitload in here.
Yeah, it's all these like bugs.
Yeah, these little tiny corkscrew worms that have gotten into him and are now controlling him for nefarious purposes for some cosmic horror from a different dimension.
Yes.
And he's taking all of them to Vegas for reasons he will not explain. And so there's this great bit where it's a bunch of people in like the back of, he has shoved them all into the back of a beer truck.
Yeah.
And so it is David and John, Big Jim, Jennifer Lopez, not that one, and Fred Shue.
Yes.
And as they're all trying to figure out what they're supposed to do, like what they're doing, why he needs them, what's going on, they also start talking about like what to do if some of them don't make it. Jennifer Lopez is like, "I've got some stuff hidden in the floorboards underneath my bed. Please take it out so my mom can't find it." Big Jim says, "Someone please look after my little sister Amy."
Yeah.
And Fred Shue says, "Just make up lies about me. Just tell people in a couple of months that like you saw me walking down the street or whatever."
And so they get to this house in the middle of like rural Nevada, and there's a package out front. And basically the shitload, he's like gonna infect them, right? He's trying to get...
Yes, he is trying to infect them because he needs more like him to help do whatever it is that these otherworld entities want to happen.
And as it turns out, the package was sent by John.
Yep.
Because when he took the soy sauce, he was able to see the future. And there was a great planting earlier in this story where David sees a receipt for a FedEx package being sent to some address in Nevada. And you're sort of like, that's interesting. And this is the payoff.
Yeah, so with sort of like the idea of like the horror of the inevitable, it was inevitable that they would go to Vegas. It is inevitable that whatever bullshit is happening is going to happen. But also because he was exposed to the soy sauce, John has a little bit of that. He was unstuck in time and he was able to plant this in a way that allowed him and his friends to get a little bit of wiggle room to get away from Shitload. Because he goes out to check the package and he gets shot in the head by a cop.
Yep, it's the same cop that interrogated David earlier and also tried to kill him.
Yes.
Because this cop saw a bunch of shit and is like, everything involved with this, I'm burning.
So this is Detective Lawrence Appleton, but John calls him Morgan Freeman because he can't remember the actor that he looks like, but he can't remember Morgan Freeman's name. And I love Detective Lawrence Appleton, and I am so sorry for everything that happens to him.
Yeah, he's a very interesting character.
He talks about having daughters and how he has seen shit that like would break other men, but this is the worst thing that he has ever experienced, and he's going to burn it so it doesn't get his daughters.
Yeah, really interesting. And then his head explodes. Yeah.
There are quite a few people who explode. The fake Jamaican from earlier, he also exploded.
Yep, Fred Shue. He exploded.
But, they finally get to Vegas. I don't want to say what happens at the end because I want you to read this book. But they do manage to come out mostly on top. They lose some people along the way. It is not a perfect victory.
Yeah, Big Jim.
Big Jim has died. Fred Shue has died. And perhaps another person.
Yeah.
As David is telling this story to Arnie,
the journalist,
Arnie starts picking out inconsistencies, saying, like, you know, I thought it was only this many, but you said this many, and then, like, you know, who was driving the car at this point, like, all this kind of stuff. And it turns out that there was probably another person with them, Todd Brickenmeyer, who at the end, at the fight in Vegas, got erased from existence.
Yeah.
David says that there's a point many months later where he and John, like, he does not exist. Todd Brickenmeyer doesn't exist.
And never has existed.
Never has existed. It's not even like he was a baby. He was erased from existence. There's a bit later where David is talking about how he and John got really drunk one night and started telling each other stories about Todd Brickenmeyer. I had a friend and I can't even mourn him because he doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that's like, oh God, right in the feels.
And it's really rough because you know, at this point you spend enough time in David's head to know that he doesn't have a lot of friends. He's kind of a curmudgeon.
Yeah.
He's kind of depressed. He's not a happy person. And he needs another friend. And the fact that his friend Todd got erased from existence, like, woof. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Fucking sucks.
So they managed to come out again, mostly on top in Vegas. This is where they officially meet Dr. Marconi for the first time. And he gives them a bunch of his books. Well, he doesn't. He says, I'll give you a copy of my book. And then John just steals an entire pallet and walks out, making direct eye contact with him.
That's John.
That's John.
Da-da-da-ba-da-da.
Oh, and Molly the dog won a bunch of money at the casino. So
somehow the dog won money.
Yeah.
So they've got money now.
So they've got some money now.
Yeah.
Enough that John can pay off some debts and buy a new truck, and David can buy a house. It is not explicitly said on page, but it is heavily implied that Molly the dog has also been exposed to soy sauce at some time.
Yes.
Because Molly the dog behaves in ways the dogs can't and don't and shouldn't.
Yeah.
At one point, she drives a car through a burning trailer to save David.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next story, we kind of get a little bit of an immediate res thing because David essentially wakes up and it's 6 months later.
Yeah.
And apparently he has these memory lapses where he forgets everything after Vegas. So we sort of start 6 months later and we sort of like reconstruct what has happened. Apparently, in that 6 months, he and Jennifer Lopez started going out. He talked about how he had a crush on her. Mm-hmm. And the two of them just trauma bonded because they went through a horrible experience.
Yeah.
And, you know, John is working another job and stuff. And basically, John is like, hey, David, you and I don't really hang out as much anymore.
Yeah.
You know, but every once in a while, you wake up not remembering the last 6 months. And then we go to, I forget where they go. They go to...
Denny's probably.
Yeah, Denny's, or they get donuts or something, and they talk about it. Things almost seem like they're kind of back to normal, but some weird stuff happens from time to time.
Yeah, because David and John have been exposed to soy sauce, they can hear and see things that aren't there for other people.
Yeah.
They talk about going to like a McDonald's at some point, and there's just a little old woman sitting in a booth and not eating anything, just sitting there. And at one point, a bunch of kids come in and sit at the same booth, but she's not really there. One of the kids sits in her.
Yeah.
And like David and John and Jennifer all see it, and they all kind of just quietly continue eating because, like, what are you supposed to say about that? Jennifer Lopez very much wants to not be involved in this anymore.
Yeah, she just wants to forget about it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
She wants to forget about it. She doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't want to, doesn't really like John that much.
No.
And eventually her and David's relationships break down past the point of repair because really kind of all they had was this trauma bond from the thing in Vegas that she doesn't want to acknowledge anymore.
Yeah, and David, you know, he sort of says that he doesn't want to remember it either, but at the same time he keeps kind of like getting himself back involved with
he keeps circling back around to John. There is a really good bit in this too where David had gotten a little canister for the soy sauce, and it just kind of shows up in there. And at one point when he's hanging out with John is like, hey, did you still have the canister? Was there any more soy sauce in it? And he was like, no there wasn't. And he's like, David is going, oh my God, he wanted to take it again.
Yeah.
Ha!
Because John is a crazy person.
Because John's a crazy person.
And that leads us to what happens with the dead mall.
Yeah. So this is This is kind of the one that I sort of skim the most.
Yeah.
I like it as like a standalone. If it was like a short story that was not part of this book, I think I would probably like it a little bit more.
Except it kind of doesn't, because it's sort of necessary to set up a lot of what happens in the next story.
This is true.
You know, there was a movie based on this book. We'll probably talk about it a little bit later.
Yep.
But like, to me, like, if you made a Netflix series and you had 10 episodes, I kind of feel like this would be like episode 4 or 5.
Yep.
And you would basically just do the one thing and then get out, and like most of the season would be the other stories.
Yes.
Because it's sort of the least consequential, but it is necessary to set up a bunch of stuff, so you got to have it in there. I get it.
So Big Jim, who died in Vegas, and we think that he was killed by whatever monsters were there.
Yep.
Sent some of the soy sauce to the local news station to try and say, look at this, what is it? There's some nonsense going on here.
Yeah.
Trying to get it to the media. And because of that, a local news reporter takes the soy sauce and goes crazy.
Yep.
By taking the soy sauce, he allows himself to essentially be taken over by an entity from the other world. And he does a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
Including... Molly kills that guy though, right?
I don't remember.
Because that's why John and David get called over, is because Molly killed a guy and she's floating like 3 feet off the ground.
Yeah, and she explodes.
And then she explodes.
But it's not her.
But it's not her. Ugh. Kind of the things that are very important to set up for the rest of the story is that things from the other world can make copies, but the copies are marked. And at the Dead Mall, there is a door that is only visible if you are on the soy sauce.
Yeah.
So David and John kind of meet this woman, Chrissy Wexler, who is another reporter. Her boyfriend is the one who got the soy sauce and took the soy sauce and then went off the rails. And so they are trying to help her find him and do whatever they can.
Yes.
And Chrissy is a Christian. She always has a cross around her neck. And because she is a like good and spiritual person, it offers some amount of protection against whatever this is. Yeah,
it seems to be a thing where it's like, you know, it haunts minds, but some minds are just not as susceptible. That seems to be sort of a fact. And that, you know, if you're somebody who's devoutly religious and very strong-willed, it can't really get into you. But somebody like David, who's very worldly and he's very cynical and he's got a bit of like a history that he's not proud of, like he's very susceptible. Yeah. So I think part of the thing with this is that like Chrissy doesn't believe that these things can hurt her because she is protected by her faith. But David knows that he is a bad person and knows that when he dies, he is going to go to hell. And that kind of makes him more susceptible to being taken over by these things. Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, having a guilty conscience, that sort of makes you more vulnerable. Yes. But they manage to kill a bunch of monsters in the mall. Yeah. This is the first time that a shadow person appears, basically. Yes. It is just... it is a bipedal, looks like a person, but it is made completely out of shadows, and it has 2 glowing dots for eyes, like cigarettes in the night, is I believe how it's described. And at one point, the shadow person tries to take over David, and in his POV, it changes slightly, but it is not that different from the way that he usually narrates. Yeah, it's basically the same, except he just wants to do shittier things than normal. Yeah. Like, it's pretty interesting. And the way that they defeat this thing is that Chrissy puts her necklace on David, and the shadow person bursts out of him and then goes into her, but she essentially kills it. Yeah. And it's a little bit implied that, like, you know, she was trying to save her boyfriend, who she loves a lot, and, like, because she had faith in herself and faith in her faith, that, like, that was what allowed her to destroy this shadow monster. Yeah. That part it happens. That gets taken care of. And then there's a neat scene where they have this VHS tape where her boyfriend in the past is talking to her now because he could see into the future and see what the answers would be. Yes. And it's a really cool little scene because we see the VHS tape earlier, but we don't see the context, and now we have the context. And it ends with the boyfriend turning to David, who is in the room watching the VHS at the time, and saying, "You are under the eye." Yeah. David has had these dreams of seeing this reptilian gigantic eye, and basically the otherworldly eldritch god has now taken notice of him, and that's bad. It's fucking with him. It's like making food taste wrong. It's making songs have the wrong lyrics. You know, like it's messing with him in subtle ways, and you know, basically trying to make him go crazy.
Yes. Which brings us to the third part.
Yes, the thing with Amy, which I think...
Sorry, fourth part.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like the tightest of them, but it's the one that has the most interesting stuff in it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. This is the one that I kind of want to skim the most because I want you to read this book and I want you to experience it for yourself. But this is where we get a lot of actual interactions with entities from other worlds.
Yes.
Amy has been on page before, but we get more of her and of her life and experience.
Yes.
And there's this really great bit where John goes, "It occurs to me that I could not lie to this girl because she is smarter than me."
Yeah. Amy, like, I really like Amy as a character because, you know, there's a lot of discourse about the idea of like men writing women and not being able to do it very well. And you know, Chrissy's a little one note. Jennifer Lopez isn't in a lot of the book. I think they're both pretty decent, but like they're not like super fleshed out characters.
Yeah.
Amy is a whole ass person.
She really
And,
is.
like, she's great. She's smart. She's funny. She's vulnerable. You know, like,
she's a little weird and a little quirky and a little off, but not like...
She's not Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
She's not Manic Pixie Dream
which
Girl.
was a worry at the time. This
Yeah.
was the mid-2000s. This was Manic Pixie Dream Girl universe. Like, that was... Everything was happening.
Yes. She is also... There is a thing where... So, David had to go to a special school for his last year of high school because of an incident. And Amy was also at that school. And it's a school for, like, kids who need special attention, essentially.
Yes, and you know, David kind of says that it's for both kids who are sort of being held back for some reason, maybe have some kind of developmental delay, but also who have, like, emotional problems.
Yeah.
Which is why he's there.
The whole time he thinks that, like, Amy is the sort of person who, like, needs a minder who can't survive on their own, but she's not. She is very capable, and she does manage to, like, hold her whole house together after Jim dies.
And the reason why she was there is because her parents died in a car accident. She lost her hand. She was, like, under a lot of medication at the time. Basically, was having a hard time dealing physically and mentally with that situation.
Yes. Amy is missing one of her hands.
Yes, it's a
It is a plot point in the book, yeah.
Yes.
Over the course of about, like, kind of a weekend or so, as David and Amy are kind of being forced to spend more time together, they a little bit start to like each other, and then eventually they kind of fall in love. But,
you know,
David is very resistant to this.
Yeah, it's not even so much fall in love. It's more that, like, they just sort of both really like each other, and they both see things about... David sees in Amy somebody who is, like, resilient.
Yes.
Like, he sees in her somebody who can, like, deal with a bunch of bullshit and just roll with the punches, and he's, like, very inspired by that.
Yeah.
And Amy sees in David somebody who is also very resilient and is willing to stand up to horrible, awful things to help other people, and she kind of doesn't understand why, but that's how she sees him.
Yeah.
And we get, in my opinion, the best part of the whole book. And it's like, it's not scary. It's kind of scary. It's not funny, but it's like, it's the thesis for the character of David. Mm-hmm. Basically, David and Amy escaped her house. They escaped a bunch of shadow people. They went through this crazy, like, interdimensional thing while he's driving his truck, where they went through, like, a darkness dimension and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And they found their way into a spot where they're kind of safe. They're in the light.
They are in a circle of light in an empty parking lot.
Yep. So they're okay here. And they talk about why they were in school together, why he went to this school. Essentially, there was this bully at David's first school. This bully was, like, star of the football team, golden child. Everyone loved him, but he was a horrible, horrible person. He, like, took this other kid, he, like, tied him up to a goal post and smeared feces on his face
and left him in the sun.
And he's, like, does just awful, horrible things, and people let him do it. They let him do it because he's untouchable. And then this bully starts to turns towards David and starts fucking with David. Starts doing awful, horrible things to him. And there's a particular time where he does something so awful that David will not tell the audience what happened. He is like, I refuse to like tell you this, and says, I'll never tell you, Amy. He doesn't even think about it from our perspective. Yeah. And after this is done, he pulls out a knife.
David has taken to carrying a pocket knife with him at school, and he attacks the bully. He slices him down his back, and then gets on top of him and gouges this kid's eyes out.
Yes. This kid, he obviously now he can't see. He's blind. He's maimed, essentially.
His star football player future is gone.
Yep. And this kid commits suicide because of it. Amy says, wow, you must have felt terrible when you find out. And David at first says, yes, I did. And then later on is like, actually, no, I didn't. Like, I didn't feel bad.
Yeah.
And David sees himself as this, like, irredeemable, like, violent person because of this situation. But when you sort of hear the context of it and you understand, like, the point of view that he's coming from, what he says that he's just like, I can't deal with the idea that somebody is powerful and can just hold you down and do whatever they want to you without any consequences. If somebody does that, I'm gonna go down fighting.
Yeah.
And we sort of get the thesis of the character.
Yeah.
His character is, I'm fighting the unknowable eldritch monstrosities because they're big bullies who can hold you down and do things to you without any repercussions, and that pisses me off.
And I'm going to go and perhaps blow myself up in order to make this stop happening.
And he doesn't think of himself as a hero for this. He does not think of himself as a good person for this. He just doesn't, like, that's not how he thinks, but you can tell that Amy is kind of impressed by this.
Yeah, Amy's looking at him and seeing a hero, and he specifically tells her, don't do that. I am not a good person.
Yeah.
And I'm not a safe person for you to be around.
Yeah. It's an amazing scene.
Yeah.
I like, no notes, A+. I can't even believe it. We talked about that scene for just like 5 minutes there. I could talk about it forever. That kind of stuff, I love that.
It is also sort of the turning point in the book, because up until this point, David doesn't care. He is totally fine with sacrificing himself in any way because he doesn't think that he is worth anything and he has nothing to live for.
Yeah.
David and John are both kind of like 20-something fuck-ups who are like just barely surviving day to day, essentially.
Yeah, they're working at the video store. John has a construction job. Like, they're just getting by.
Yeah, they're just barely scratching out a living.
Yeah.
And David says, I was the perfect person to deal with all of this cosmic nonsense because I could throw myself at it and I wouldn't care about having to come home. But then he meets Amy, and now he says specifically, I don't think that I can save the whole world, but maybe I can save just enough for me and this girl to stand on.
Yeah.
And that's some shit that I carry deep in my heart.
Yeah. It's really beautiful, and it makes the climax of this section of the story, which we won't get too much into.
Sure.
Please read. Really powerful.
Yes.
They basically go to an alternate reality, and in this alternate reality, they're gonna basically try to take over their reality.
This is where we find out that this cosmic entity is called Korok.
Yeah.
And it has been trying to make inroads into our world. There is some stuff where, like, you know, there are hieroglyphs from ancient Egypt, and there's, like, uncontacted tribe who, like, both, like, they have a similar symbol.
Yeah.
And, like, worship a similar god that sound like Korok.
And we learn a lot of this stuff from
Marconi
and you know, his book and all this kind of stuff. And Korok is described as just being this giant, like, flesh monstrosity thing.
Ugh.
It's, like, really gross.
Picture all of the gross shit that is in your grease trap after you do dishes, like grease and fat and like hair and particles and all this nonsense, and now make it infinitely large. That's Korok.
Yep. And I don't want to leave out Robert North.
No, yeah, Robert
because
North.
He's a very fun and weird character. Robert North is this just weird guy who shows up in David's house or David's car one day.
Yep.
And he seems to be working against Korok, but he also seems to be some kind of eldritch monstrosity as well.
Yeah.
We're not really quite sure. And funny, reading the book, the way he was described, I immediately thought, God, man, Doug Jones should play this guy. And in the movie, Doug Jones
plays that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk really quickly about the movie. The movie is very different from the book because the book is serialized and has several different stories. They had to cut a bunch of stuff out. It basically jumps straight from the party to the end when they go into the other world. I mean, there's some stuff in between, like they go through the dead mall.
Yeah.
But like Jennifer Lopez isn't there, Chrissy isn't there, that whole bit in the middle isn't there, which like fair. It is a serialized story, and in a 2-hour movie, it'd be very confusing to have like 3 different female quote unquote love interests.
Yeah. There's just so many characters, and it's hard to get it across. And in fact, Arnie, the journalist, is played by Paul Giamatti, and he even said in an interview I read, where basically he was just like, "I loved the casting, I loved the movie, but they're going to cut the crap out of it just because they have to."
Yeah,
and he was right. I haven't watched the movie, but like I can't imagine how you could turn that book into a 90-minute film and keep a lot of the stuff that makes it interesting.
It did have a pretty stacked cast, though. Paul Giamatti, Clancy Brown, Glenn Truman, and Doug Jones were all in this movie.
Great cast. I mean, Clancy Brown as Dr. Marconi, that's really fun. I like that.
It was perfect casting. It was so good.
Yeah, I love Clancy Brown. I love Paul Giamatti. I love Doug Jones. Like, I love all these actors. I'm really glad that it got to be made. I would like to watch it. Just to see how it is. In a weird way, it's kind of like the Hitchhiker's Guide movie, which I did really like.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I acknowledged that there were lots of things that were wrong with it that were not adapted properly from the book because you just kind of couldn't.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Martin Freeman is Arthur Dent.
Yeah.
He just is.
Yeah.
Period. I don't like who else could it be? That is human man.
Yep.
Take
Take the most average man. It's Martin Freeman.
Yeah, he's great at it. Yeah.
So then really quickly about the epilogue.
Yes.
You have qualms with the epilogue. I quite like it, but...
So the story of the epilogue, we won't get too much into detail because it kind of intersects with how the end of the other part goes. But essentially, David wants Amy to go to college and leave and have her own life and not be around him who is dangerous and monsters are going to come to get him.
So when I talk about and watch Buffy, I'm always like, why do so many people live on the Hellmouth? Such bad things happen here. Move away from the Hellmouth. Yeah. And David wants to do the reasonable thing and get Amy away from the Hellmouth.
Yeah. And while that's reasonable, it is kind of denying Amy some agency.
Yes.
And he kind of acknowledges that, but also he's just like, it doesn't matter. She'll move away and make new friends and then she'll forget about me because I suck. And I get that. I get that idea. And when Amy flies away, David has this vision that a shadow person shows him. He gets teleported inside the fuel tank of the plane that Amy is on. And the shadow person basically says, I can blow up this plane. And if you mess with us, he doesn't say it, but he makes it very clear. If you mess with us, I will go back in time and blow up this plane. From any time that you do anything to us, I will make it so that the plane always blew up.
Yeah, this moment is forever.
Yeah.
I can always take her away from you.
Yeah, and so he's like, well, shit. Yeah.
All beans.
And I thought that was really horrifying and scary and wow, that's really interesting. And then she just kind of comes back home and they're together again.
Yeah.
And it kind of kicks the legs out from that horror a little bit. And then the last hour of the epilogue is David and John doing some totally different thing that has nothing to do with the rest of the plot. And I get it's trying to be oh, well, now it's just their day-to-day as they deal with all these interdimensional horrible monsters and stuff. But it's all right, guys, let's wrap this up. We also wrap up the situation with David talking to Arnie.
Arnie, yeah. I will say I quite like the epilogue in the sense that I like that a lot of this weird shit is now just mundane to David and John. That it is part of whatever nonsense they're doing every day. There's always some weird tiny bullshit. And they can choose not to engage with some of that stuff. And in this case, they do choose not to engage with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it is kind of funny to me too that like, okay, so there's this orb, they go into it, there's a whole world that needs saving, they don't want to do it. There are like 4 kids who show up and then they go into the orb, and like they play out essentially a movie and then come back.
Yeah.
So like these 4 kids have like a whole adventure that could be its own movie about like saving an interdimensional kind of thing, and then they come back and they're like, you'll never believe what just happened, and David is like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. Other dimension, save the world, been there, done that.
Whatever, leave us alone, we're trying to play basketball.
It's very funny, and I would like that if it was 5 minutes, but it's like half an hour.
That's fair.
Or I say of the audiobook, in depending on how long you read, it might not be, whatever. But like, it feels like it takes up so much time, and it would have been better as just a little joke. I will say that the wrap up with Arnie is a total gut punch, and I absolutely love it, and I don't want to spoil that because it's such a great twist.
Agreed.
Yeah, so really, really recommend the book. Overall, I really recommend the book. I should be clear. I have criticisms of it. I'll get to one here in a minute that I remembered that I want to talk about. But it's worth reading. It's very good. The character's really interesting. The world's very interesting. The creepy eldritch stuff. The one criticism I will leave on, and I talked about this when we were kind of talking about the book, is that it is a comedy horror book.
Yeah.
I think that this book, the comedy and the horror sort of are at odds with each other. That the comedy kind of undercuts the horror a little bit, and I'm not sure if there's a way to extricate it. Like, this is not so much a criticism, like, constructively to be like, well, next time do this. It's more like just from a perspective of a reader. It's like the horrible, unknowable eldritch monster talks like a shitty 13-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Because that's what he is. He's a shitty 13-year-old kid bully. He just happens to be an unknowable, ancient eldritch monster. And there's a certain resonance of the theme there where like I really like it from a certain perspective. From the comedy perspective, I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
But it does kind of undercut the horror a little bit.
I will give you that.
Yeah.
I do think that like if you think about like the impulse control of a 13-year-old,
Yeah.
but also this thing has like terrible cosmic powers we don't understand and can't stop.
Yeah.
I think it works for me on that level.
I do like towards the very end we have the scene where Marconi like talks to his wife.
Yeah.
And he talks about how he thinks that the gods, if they exist, are by definition cruel and evil. And he basically says that cruelty is the natural expression of power, and so therefore the more powerful you are, by definition the more cruel you are. And so as you go up the ladder of power to gods, they are infinitely more cruel.
Yes.
Because they just by nature have to be. And, that's a really fucked up thought. God, I hope it's not true. But it's an understandable thought process, and it does kind of, like, neatly wrap up that whole concept.
Yes.
But, I sort of had a similar criticism of The Substance.
Sure.
When we watched it, is that, body horror is sort of by, its very definition, this sort of horror of being transformed, horror of losing your form, like, there's a permanence to your disfigurement, and having sort of wacky, you don't know if this is real or a dream or not, kind of undercuts the body horror element because you're not sure how like real and permanent this is.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked The Substance. I didn't think it was a bad movie, but like it was less horror and more like satire.
Yeah, that's fair.
And to me, and I kind of feel like this book does a similar thing.
Yeah.
I thought there were moments that were pretty bone-chilling, but overall, I thought it was mostly just kind of fun.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I do think that it is a little bit more heavy on the comedy than on the horror. There are definitely moments where every time I read it, it gives me chills, and there are still jokes that I laugh at.
Oh, yeah. There are so many. There are so many fun little moments. I will say, I'm trying to think of other really scary moments. This is Halloween Spooktacular, after all. Like I said, when he gets teleported into the fuel tank of the plane, I think that's a really scary moment. I do feel like it gets undercut after that, but I thought that, and then when I was listening to it, that really scared me.
When they are in the other world that they call Shit Narnia.
Shit Narnia!
The people who brought them there are trying to make Earth like Shit Narnia.
Yeah.
They want to bring Korok to us because to them, Korok is a supercomputer that has perfect knowledge of the future and will make life better for everybody. And as they're trying to convince David and John of this, they show them this video of a bunch of people who did not like Korok, like, ruling over this planet, all being forced into a trench that is miles long. It is hundreds of thousands of people, men, women, and children, and then a bunch of disgusting spiders that look like they were bred for war jump out and burrow through people.
Yes.
And they just, like, chew them up and burrow through them and leave them full of holes and then disappear. And this is again, miles-long trench full of people who are still alive.
Yes.
And that's one of those things that, like, every time I think about it, I'm like, oh! Yeah,
the spiders appear a couple of times in the book.
Yeah.
And every single time they do, they freak me out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I might have a small amount of arachnophobia. I am beginning to realize this. I think spiders are cool.
Yeah.
And I like them, but, like, if I dream, like, I've had scary dream, it's usually got spiders in it. Yeah. I've always noticed this.
I like spiders. I think they're good to exist in the world. I don't ever want them on my person, please.
Yeah, they're pretty freaky. Cool though. It's like sometimes I say these words and I think to myself, I'm like, God, if there's a spider god up there, and like he's just like, well, you think spiders are scary, huh? And I'm like, but I think they're cool. I also think they're cool. Please don't like send brain spiders after me. Like,
Arachne, have mercy.
Yeah, exactly. Wasps, fuck wasps. They suck. Like, if there's a wasp god, fuck you.
Yeah. So I will also say there are sequels to this book. The next one is This Book is Full of Spiders.
No!
Yeah. Full title, This Book is Full of Spiders. Seriously, dude, don't touch it. It is a lot more of like one story told all the way through.
Yeah.
I super recommend that. If you are interested in this, but you really hate serialization for some reason, you can pick up This Book is Full of Spiders and more or less, like, you'll be fine reading it. There is one big thing that we have not talked about that comes up in that book, but you can pick it up through context clues, essentially.
Yeah, totally.
And then there is another one, What the Hell Did I Just Read? That is the one I've read John Dies at the End and This Book is Full of Spiders a bunch of times. I've read them a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I've only read What the Hell Did I Just Read once and it feels like a depressive episode.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was just in a depressive episode when I read it or if it is a much bleaker book, but I haven't read it again, and I'm actually kind of planning to reread This Book Was Full of Spiders and then What the Hell Did I Just Read, because there was also another book that came out this year. If you're reading this, you're in the wrong universe. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I believe there is a planned 5th book.
Cool. Well, maybe we'll do This Book is Full of Spiders for next Halloween Spooktacular. Yeah. That'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's going to wrap up here today.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we wanted to mention?
Not that I can think of. Molly's a good girl.
Molly is a good girl.
Yeah. She does save them a couple of times.
She does. She drives a car. She wins at slots in Vegas.
There's a bit where they're like trying to figure out how to get into Vegas, and they have this very convoluted plan, and then later Molly shows up with like a Deus Ex Machina, basically, of like, I could have done this the whole time.
Yep.
If you had simply listened to me, the dog.
She shits out a bomb.
She shits out a bomb.
Molly's a good girl. Anyway, before we go, I would just like to say thank you to our roommate, Neil, for letting us use some music that he did a few years ago for our Halloween Spooktacular. It's the Beach Harris Various Curses. It's like a album. I worked on a couple of songs. A bunch of friends worked on a couple of songs, but Neil's kind of like the through line. Mm-hmm. So the intro music, outro music, mid-roll music, all that stuff, that is all from that. You can find it on Bandcamp, Beach Harris Various Curses. It's a lot of fun. I really like doing it. And there's also like other songs that we didn't use in there that you should listen to. I think they're really good.
Agreed.
Anyway, next time we'll be talking about a spooky thing that is very spooky to me specifically. So that'll be next. And have a happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.